Are you like wondering why we have you here?
Yeah, that's I'm open for whatever this is going to be, but I am also wondering, yeah, what's
Well, Gary and I, we do this we find people that just, I think we want to hear stories. We want to hear people where they came from, what got them to where they are now, and just seeing what you do. I don't think Gary is really familiar with you. And I mean,
No.
I'm not totally familiar about you and your journey, but I love what I see. I love and see the energy that you give off and what you're trying to portray. So yeah, that's pretty much why we were here. We want to hear people's story from what brought you to what you're doing now, and was there things in your life that really made you think about why you're doing what you do now?
great?
Yeah, it was the things in the past that made you go, this isn't working.
Right.
I have to find a better way. Or
Right.
Absolutely.
So there's no like specific question and answer right or wrong here. So
no, basically it's just a conversation that we have to help people realize that there are ways that they can heal their body, that they can heal their spirit. Sometimes our spirit is wounded, and people just need the belief and the courage to take that step. And I feel, and I think Angie does too, that we're a guide, and people can lean on us till they get enough courage and strength to take that first step, let alone the next one.
Right.
So we're just looking for that positive. And I watched some of your video last night, and you have a very positive message, and it's very clear.
Thank you.
And people can relate to it, and that's really what we're looking for, is something that people can relate to realize they're not as stuck and trapped as they think they are. So
that's why we started our group, LivefoodDtox, was, well, for a few reasons, but one also was to give people, like Gary said, hope that you're not stuck. Like, I was at a very, very stuck position when I met Gary, and he helped get me out of that. He helped give me knowledge. He helped like carry me basically. And that's really like my big passion for me, and I know Gary as well, is to get the knowledge out there that you're not stuck and we can move forward. We can get out of where we once were, and so we like to connect with those kinds of people.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Okay, well, I'm Jerome Braggs. I am an intuitive, a spiritual teacher, a speaker, and a poet. And my work in the world really is to help people heal themselves, both their lives and their bodies, and live more delicious and awakened lives through the practice of loving themselves and embodying more of the soul. I believe that self-loving ourselves and soul embodiment are our most healing and transformative practices in the world. That our lives and our bodies are exponentially more healthy and more delicious when we are applying those to ourselves. And I believe they're medicines. They're soul medicines. They are medicines when we apply them, they affect and heal everything in our lives and everything in our bodies, and help us raise our lives and bodies to a level of well-being. So my work in the world is really to help people heal and live really, really well through self-love and soul embodiment.
fantastic.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And what put you on that journey? Or were you born on that journey?
Well, I think all of us are born on the journey of love. We are love. We come from love, and we return to love when we're through in this particular incarnation. But I can't say that my whole journey, my life's journey, was centered in embodying my soul and loving myself. I didn't grow up in a culture or in an environment that really fostered that well. So as a kid, I knew one thing that happened for me was I knew I was gay when I was 5 years old. And at the same time that I knew, I had that awareness that I was attracted to the same gender, I also knew that that wasn't okay, that wasn't okay in my culture and in my environment, and that wasn't going to be a safe thing for me to express or for me to be honest about. So I made a decision in my 5-year-old body and 5-year-old consciousness that I wasn't going to fully be that part of myself. So from 5 years old until about 24, 25, which I'll get to here in a second, um, I rejected a part of myself. I suppressed a part of myself. I denied a part of myself. And what happens when we, with me, what happened with me, which is happens with all of us when we do that, when we reject one part of ourselves, we end up rejecting the entire totality of ourselves. Like we can't really compartmentalize ourselves as we're taught that we can. When you begin to reject something about yourself, you end up, it bleeds out into other areas because that's a wound, It's when we're not accepting and embracing ourselves and our wholeness in some way. It's a wound, and like wounds on our body, they bleed out. So, um, so no, I did not know how to love myself and to embody my wholeness and to really accept my worthiness, my inherent worthiness and enoughness. That was something that I had to learn. And that, when I was that moment from 5 years to 25 began to kind of just get bigger and bigger. Like I really felt ashamed. I was hiding a lot of myself. I didn't really speak up for myself for fear of, really the fear was that there was something wrong with me. And if I was ever really myself and never really truly myself and, lived my truth and spoke my truth and said what I meant and lived in a way that felt like true to myself, then people were going to reject me and that they were going to find out something's wrong with me and I wasn't going to belong, right? I wasn't going to be accepted. Well, that all came to a height when I was 24 and I had just graduated from college and I was living in DC working, and I had been experiencing some flu-like symptoms. And they had been going on for about 2 weeks. And I had been doing everything I knew how to do to get better. I was taking over-the-counter stuff and, my own little remedies, vegan soups and all that stuff. And it wasn't getting any better. So I went to the hospital and I wanted to just kind of get checked out and get some medicine so I can go home and go to work. Well, what ended up happening is went to the hospital with what I thought was the flu and ended up being diagnosed with kidney failure, pneumonia, pancreatitis, anemia, fluid-packed lung, a parasite in my stomach, and if all that wasn't delicious enough already, I was diagnosed with AIDS, and I was given 7 days to live. And after the doctors kind of, gave me the diagnosis and kind of told me to get my affairs in order, I had what I now understand with working with many people as I have in the past few years that have had experiences similar to this. I now know is like the 5 questions we kind of ask ourselves when we're dying. And I kind of had this moment where I was asking myself, okay, was I happy with the life that I had lived? I was faced with the reality that I was dying. So here I was on my bed having to kind of review my life. And was I happy with the life that I had lived? Was I, had I achieved the dreams and my deepest longings that I wanted? And did the people in my life that I really cared about know how I really felt about them? Like, did I really tell them? Had I ever really been myself? And did I really love myself? Did I love this person that I was? And was I being the real person that I was on the planet? And although at this point, I was, already on my spiritual path by this time. So I, understood metaphysics and spirituality. I believed that we were spiritual beings or souls having a human incarnation. And I believed that there was something after, this incarnation, that death wasn't an ending. So I wasn't afraid to die per se. But the answers to those questions for me were all no. Like I wasn't happy. Had never really been myself. I wasn't loving myself. So although I wasn't afraid to die, I was really horrified. I became terrified actually of the fact that I was getting ready to die not having really lived. And so I made a commitment on my deathbed that I wasn't going to die then, because I didn't want to die like that. I wanted to die knowing that, I had deposited on the planet why I came here. Like had been Jerome fully. I had loved him. I had been happy. I had lived the life that made me feel good. And I had poured love out of my heart to the people I cared about. So I had been a student of metaphysics and the law of attraction and stuff by then. I've been reading all the books and going to workshops and things. So I knew and kind of had a belief that you could create your reality. So I said, okay, if this is really true, then this has to be true for me right now. And it has to be true for me in 7 days. And it has to be miraculously true. Like if I can create my reality, I have to be able to create a miracle for myself. And so I threw everything I knew about the law of attraction or creating a reality at this. I mean, I did the vision board. I was doing appreciation journal. I was a vegan, raw vegan. Anything that anybody said anywhere about creating your life, I did it. And I was in the hospital for a month. And 2 months after I got out of the hospital, I was fully healed. There was, all of the illnesses were gone. My kidneys were back fully functioning, and they couldn't find any HIV or AIDS in my system anywhere. And I had this kind of feeling like, oh, okay, this is really, really real, and I'm really this powerful being, and anything is possible. And I thought I had it all figured out. I thought, like, I got it. This is all it. Like, I know the key to life. I know the key to like living well. Until I found myself back in that same hospital a year and a half later with the exact same diagnosis to the T. Wow. And this time, instead of 7 days to live, I had 48 hours. And on my deathbed this time, when the doctors left me alone and kind of called my parents, who were getting a flight immediately to come because they thought they had hours before, they would see their son, their last days of their son. I had a different awareness. Like, I wasn't asking myself these same questions. I knew that if I was back in the hospital again with this exact same diagnosis, I mean, everything to the T, and the exact same, like to the exact same T cell count almost, that this wasn't a coincidence. This was my soul, the higher part of me, the most divine part of me, trying to communicate with me through the state of my health. And that there was some communication, some message my soul has been trying to get to me that I was trying very hard not to listen to. So on my deathbed this time, I asked a different question. And I asked it to my soul. And I said, hey, I'm here, and I'm sorry, and I'm ready. I'm ready to listen. And I want to know not just how to heal and survive. I want to know how to survive. I want to know how to thrive. I don't want to just heal and have to keep coming back to the hospital. I want to know what it takes to really live well, like to be well and live well. And I had a near-death experience. I had at that moment what many people call a near-death experience, except I didn't actually cross over. It kind of happened while I was in the hospital bed. And right after I asked that question, like, I started to feel a sense of oneness with everything. Like, I couldn't tell where my hand stopped and where my hospital bed, started. The walls and the light in the room and everything just seemed to be part of me. Like, I couldn't tell the difference between the IV drip and my blood flowing. It was like everything was me in the room. And at that same time that I felt this sense of oneness, I felt this sense of absolute, profound love and okayness. Like, I knew that all was well, and I knew that I was loved beyond what I have words for. But it was just this profound sense of like everything being okay. And in that moment, I heard what people call the voice. I saw, the room got kind of really, really light and really dark at the same time. It's kind of hard to describe. It was like the brightest light I've ever seen, and also the darkest I've ever seen as well. It was like at the same time. And I heard the voice, and the voice said to me, well, first, the voice sounded like this very sacred divine being, but it sounded like me, but the me that wasn't neurotic and wasn't like, sick and afraid and ashamed and all of that. And the voice said to me, it said, beloved, you know a lot about manifesting things. You know how to push and fight and make things happen for you. But you don't know anything about how to just let life be good to you. And you don't know anything. You want to know how to be well and how to live well. And it takes this to love yourself and to embody more of your soul. You don't know anything about that yet, but you're going to learn. And then the voice went away, and the sense of oneness kind of started to dissipate, and I could feel kind of this back to I felt my body again, and the hospital room went back to its dullness, and the IV drip was the IV drip, and I could feel my heart beating. It was my heart and not just everything else. And I knew I had been given kind of the big wake up call moment. Like I had this mystical divine experience where I was given the big aha moment for my life, like how to heal and transform my life, which was to love myself and to embody my soul. But I was scared at the same time because I didn't know how to do that, right? I didn't know. I was scared, one, because I didn't know how to do it. And I was scared, two, because I knew it was going to require me to be a different person. And I didn't know who that person was going to be. And I didn't know, I knew, even though this person that I was being was very painful, I knew what that person was. And I didn't know who the person was that was no longer ashamed of himself and was no longer afraid and hiding and was no longer beating up on himself or criticizing himself or diminishing himself or rejecting himself. But I made a commitment because I really wanted to be well, not just in body, but I wanted to live well. And so I made a commitment on my deathbed that I was going to learn everything that it was, what it really meant to love yourself, what it really meant to embody the most divine aspect of yourself in your life. And that I was going to truly heal, no matter what it took, no matter how long it took. I was signing up for the long haul. Now, what I didn't know on my hospital bed was that was going to be like a 12-year journey. And that there was going to be a lot more really miraculous and mystical experiences that were going to help me learn, and a lot more painful and challenging situations that were going to arise that were going to help me wake up as well. But that entire journey really helped me understand how truly transformative and healing loving ourselves is, and what it actually takes and what it doesn't take. And to really develop a consistent and frequent and very real and tangible relationship with my soul, with the highest part of me, with the most loving, whole, worthy, divine aspect of me, and bring that part not just in the vibrational dimension that it exists in, but into my consciousness and into my emotional state and into my behavior. And that changed everything. It transformed my relationships. It transformed my work. It transformed how I show up in the world, and it transformed my body. Like my body began to heal the more and more loving I began to come with myself, and the more I began to embody who I really am. And that began the foundation for what I do in the world today. That's pretty my journey there.
Awesome. Now, at what point did you know you were intuitive?
Well, as a kid, it started kind of as a kid. I was having conversations with, it's very similar to kind of what Neil Donald Walsh describes as conversations with God, except they weren't as profound because I was a kid. I was like 5 and 6. So they were at the level that a 5 or 6-year-old child could understand. But it started when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I was in bed one night, and my mother, I heard somebody calling my name, and I went to, and how our house was set up when I was young. I was living with my mom, and her room was across the hall from me. So she was like on the other side of the house. And so I would get up out of my bed and I would go over to her across the hall to her room and I'd ask like, did you call me? And she'd be like, no, I didn't call you. And so I'd go back to bed and I'd hear my name called again. And I'd get up and I'd go back over to her room and say, did you call me? And she said, no. And this went on for like 4 nights in a row. And on like the 4th night, she was just tired because this was in the middle of the night, like when I should be asleep. And so like on the 4th night, she was like, okay, I'm not calling you. Maybe this is God. I grew up in a traditionally Christian home. So my mother's like, maybe this is God talking to you. And, why don't you go back and the next time you hear your name called, why don't you ask God what God has to say? And that's exactly what I did. And that began this kind of conversation with God, where I was literally having these conversations. And the conversations were, I don't remember a lot of them because they happened probably for like 3 weeks 3 weeks every day in a row. And they were mostly like, that I was loved and that would be okay. And that it was important for me to have fun. And just to kind of, it wasn't about acceptance and all of that, because I don't think I would have had an understanding of what that really is at that time. It was mostly about like having fun and that there are people watching out for me and that I'm loved. Like I have a sense of love. And so that was kind of how that started. And then as I began to grow up in my kind of adolescent and teenage years, I just kind of had a different feeling from what I was being taught necessarily in the church. Specifically, I was noticing that I could tell whether or not people were lying to me. You just couldn't
Nice
really.
gift to have.
Yeah,
Very
but
nice
it was,
gift to have.
but
At
it
times.
also, if you don't really understand at the time, it can also
Right.
be painful because you don't know why they're necessarily lying. You just know they are. And when you're rejecting yourself, I took that in to mean that they must not like me enough to tell me the truth, right? But I could tell if you're holding something back or if you're not being truthful, or I could hear the words behind the words, and I could see the actions behind the action. So that was kind of how that happened. The real depth of my intuitive abilities, like the medical intuition and the channeling and all that, didn't open up until I was in the midst of my healing journey. That was when I really got really deeper into meditation and really deeper into journaling and really trying to connect in with my soul and ask questions. And that's when the gifts that I didn't really want at the time started showing up, like mediumship. So I started being able to hear and connect with people's loved ones that are in spirit or in source, is what I call it. When I started to connect with the higher consciousness at the time that I called the beloveds, which I thought which are a non-physical consciousness, kind of like Abraham Hicks and Bashar, but that I now understand is actually my soul. It's part of me. That began during that time.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry. So growing up in a Christian home, how did that pan out for you? Like, how did you have the support of your family, or did they look at you like, what are you talking about? That just, there's not a lot of meshing. I grew up in a very Catholic Christian home, and so this would have been like devilish, So.
Oh yeah. It's a beautiful duality and dichotomy because on one aspect, I got a lot from my upbringing with that. Like growing up in the Black church specifically, I was taught that, and I learned that you have a direct relationship with what at the time what I call God, right? That you have a direct relationship with that, and you can talk to it, and it's on your side always. And there's a power and a source and a wisdom that you have access to, and that you can ask it, right? But my teaching was that that was something external, and that that was different from me, and that it wasn't a part of me, right? And my transformation and my healing journey, my awakening journey, the change was really that it's not out there, it's me. It's actually me. It's not something different. It's the part of me that is it's the biggest part of me, and it's the most whole, loving, wise, eternal part of me. So it's not something externally, and it's not even really even something internally. It's me. It's actually all of me. It's all of us. It's all that is. So I am grateful for my upbringing for first teaching me that there is a relationship there and how to begin to foster that relationship. Now that I outgrew that aspect of it from the point of it being external to understanding that it's really me having a relationship with myself. My parents and my family are still in that particular pathway. And so there are some belief systems that they have that don't allow them to really embrace all of what I'm about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there was a kind of spiritual coming out of the closet. You know, I tell people I've had to come out of the closet twice. And actually, coming out of the closet spiritually was actually the hardest one for me. Because as a African American man, Christianity is not just a religion, it's part of your culture, of your being. Like for African Americans, Christianity was the very thing that brought us out of slavery and what brought us out of turmoil and pain, and brought us from being seen as three-fifths of a person or less than, right? That was the thing that African Americans really held on to and embodied, that allowed them to surpass such oppression. And so Christianity became intertwined in the Black community with Blackness, not just with sacredness, but with actually your beingness of being Black. So when you, as an African American, when you step outside of that pathway, of that religious path, it's almost like you're rejecting your culture and you're rejecting your ethnicity. So it can be, it's not just you're not just saying, I don't, it's almost like you're not just saying, I don't believe in the God that you believe in. It's almost saying, I don't believe in you or the path that got me here. So it's a hard thing. And for specifically for African Americans, there can be a large rejection and abandonment and aloneness that can happen when you come out like that. So the fear was, for a long time, I was afraid to tell my parents that I was this intuitive and that I was working in the work that I'm doing, because not just because they would fear, I might be going to hell, or that was against, God, but of the pain that they would feel that their son was no longer part of the culture and no longer part of, was rejecting the Black experience in a way. So it was hard, but it was also necessary, because you can't be free and you can't live well, and you definitely can't be healthy if you're hiding and if you're in bondage and if you're not being authentic, if you're not living your truth. And this was definitely my truth. So I had to do it. But just like all coming out of the closet moments, you come out and you feel there's a moment initially where you feel liberated, but you also feel like you're no longer, you knew what the closet was, right? You had your life in there, and you had situated the clothes in such a way that you know how to rest in there and you're comfortable in there, and that's what you know. And when you step out of the closet, you don't have that anymore. And you're out into this new way of being and new way of living. And all of the clothes and all of the darkness and all of that you were so accustomed to and you had a relationship with, you don't have a relationship with that anymore. So in the same way was what I had to deal with when I came out as an intuitive to my family and to those around me. Was I had to kind of go it alone for a little bit. I mean, my family didn't completely abandon me or reject me. We have a very good relationship, but there was a moment where it was kind of difficult, where they didn't understand and they weren't accepting, not necessarily accepting of it, but they definitely didn't understand it,
Hmm.
and didn't believe that it was the right path for me to take.
So, in the duality of your illness as a child and as a young adult, and the freedom that you feel now, do you think that the struggle with trying to get to where you are now is why you got sick?
Oh, absolutely. I am through this process and through what I'm able to see in my gifting now. I understand that the majority of illnesses are it's almost like 98% of illnesses and diseases are a reflection of what's going on in our emotional state. So the kidney failure and HIV were a direct reflection for me of the shame that I felt. So I'll break it down. So HIV basically is a disease where is an immunosuppressive disease. So it's an autoimmune disease. So almost like your immune system is rejecting you in a way, right?
Mm, yeah.
And so, and it's a direct reflection of the rejection of myself that I have been doing for years. And it also made me feel, HIV made me feel like it made me feel ashamed, right? And it also, there was shame attached to it. Like, I felt like I wouldn't belong and that people wouldn't want me and I was undesired. Well, that was a direct reflection of how I had been feeling all my life,
Mhm.
right? Not that I didn't belong and that it wasn't like it just came up. I tell people by the time it shows up in the body, it has long since been in your emotional state. It's long since been there. So it doesn't just happen overnight. This is something you've been dealing with usually, if not for years, for at least several months. And so HIV was the direct reflection and manifestation of the self-rejection and the shame that I had. Kidney failure was okay, the kidneys literally filter the blood, they keep you healthy and they keep you balanced. Well, because I didn't live authentic and I didn't, wasn't liberated. I was in bondage. I wasn't balanced. I didn't have a balance there. I wasn't happy, right? And,
Mhm.
and really what balance is like, where are you happy? Are you at peace? And do you have a connection with your wholeness? None of that was happening for me,
Mhm.
right? I was scared. I was living a life of fear. I was scared that I was inadequate, that I wasn't enough, and that something was wrong with me, and people were going to find out. And when they found out, they were going to make me even more inadequate and reject me even more. So those illnesses were direct reflections of the vibrational states that I had been holding for years. And the healing of those illnesses, the journey towards my healing wasn't just about like what I was eating and all of that. It was more about, can I change how I feel about myself? Can I change my emotional state instead of feeling like something's wrong with me? Instead of being like there's so much that I need to worry about and I'm afraid and that I'm ashamed and I'm rejecting myself. Can I accept myself? Can I embrace myself? Can I begin to understand that I'm loved and I'm safe just as I am unconditionally? And can I really feel good about myself? Really simply, can I get to a point where I really feel good about myself? All areas of myself, so that there's no space within me that's left unloved or rejected. So that was, yeah, the diseases to me, and in my work with people and healing people, diseases are a reflection and of where in ourselves we're not loving ourselves and we're not being ourselves, and they're an invitation from the soul to begin the journey to do that.
Amazing, fantastic. I love that. And you got a question, Angie?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So when you find someone who is lost in that situation, because I feel if we don't live those situations, it's hard for us to help because we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find someone in that situation, what do you do to try to help them realize, embrace the love that they have, and help them manifest that into their own being, into their own life?
Yeah. So what I say, how I describe, loving ourselves, the simple answer is that you feel good about yourself unconditionally, and that you are a force of good to yourself unconditionally. So not just when you're the weight on the scale, certain weight on the scale, or when you have a certain bank account balance, or when you've achieved a certain status or degree or success, um, or when you have something or don't have something, right? Can you feel good about yourself now? And can you be good to yourself now? Like not just when, again, not just when there's a certain situation or circumstance that's present in your life or not present in your life. Right now, with all that you have or don't have, with who you are, or who you're not, can you stand up for yourself, speak up for yourself? Can you follow your joy? Can you say no to what you really want to say no to? All of that now. So can you be good to yourself, and can you feel good about yourself? And when that's usually my first step of work with someone is, let's talk about how do you feel good about yourself. So we need to have a relationship with appreciation and acceptance, right? So I'm a big proponent of appreciation, self-appreciation journals, like getting a journal out literally and writing in it every day for at least 5 to 15 minutes. You can even switch it. I like to switch it up to where I write 3 times a day for 5 minutes in this journal. About just 10 things that I love that I appreciate and love about my body and that I love about myself, right? That begins to change because most of us are on this train of thought of always looking at what's wrong with us, what needs to be improved, what needs to be fixed. And when we understand, when you understand the law of attraction, if you don't even want to just talk about the law of attraction, you can understand the mind and the reticular activating system is that what you focus on must expand. In our minds, with the reticular activating system, whatever you focus on, the mind can only process. So they found out, through the study of the mind and in quantum physics as well, that there are about 100, I think it's somewhere between 100 million bits of information that are available to us at any given moment in time, right? So right here, right now, as I'm talking to you now, in this space, in this room, there are 100 million bits of information available to me. But my brain and our brains can only process 2,000 bits of information. And those 2,000 bits are responsible for what we actually get to see.
So this is why 10 people can be in the room and all have a different story.
They all have a different story. They all have a different perspective and those 2,000 bits, what determines those 2,000 bits going into that, directly what you said, is what you believe is true for you, how you feel about yourself, and what you're deciding to focus on. So your brain collapses down all the possibilities, what's already there, to allow you just to see and to focus on what you believe is true and what you decided to focus on. You're not seeing what's actually there. You're seeing what you said to yourself is the truth. So why appreciation journals are so important is because when we're beating up on ourselves and criticizing ourselves, we're not really actually seeing what's there. But we've had this pattern of saying, well, I'm fat. So then your brain collapses your reality down to only be able to see the parts of you that are fat. It may not even be true. But when you shift your focus and you say, okay, instead of looking at what's wrong with me, I'm going to tell my brain I want to see what's right. Then you begin to expand out to this whole different area. When you shift your focus and you try to shift your truth, it shifts the 2,000 bits. So you see a whole different reality. You see a whole different experience that's available to you. And it's not like it wasn't there before. You just couldn't see it.
Right.
And so that's the first thing I have people do, is to change your train of thought so you begin to see a different experience. So how can you appreciate yourself more? right? And as you appreciate yourself more, you start to feel better about yourself, and it changes your emotional state, and your body begins to respond in kind. And then how can you treat yourself better? Right? What do you need to do? Like, I don't know exactly what you need to do to treat yourself better. You do, though. And so I work with people to really get in tune with themselves and listen to their intuition, which is the part of them that knows, right? And what do you need to really heal yourself, to heal your life, to feel better, to experience more joy, to bring more love in your life? What do you need to do? Not the entire staircase of things you need to do to get from A to Z, but what's the next best step for you, right? So that you can begin to develop a relationship with yourself that is based on worthiness and wholeness and appreciation and love, and nourishing yourself and affirming and supporting yourself instead of rejecting and depriving and beating up on yourself. So that's really the first steps into transformation is, okay, how can I feel better about myself? And how can I begin to treat myself better and be more connected to myself? So that's kind of the process of that. Like, so that you can shift those 2000 bits, so that instead of just seeing pain, shame, lack, and limitation, you can start seeing wholeness and worthiness and love and enoughness and joy. Because it's not, and you don't have to, it's not this arduous list of things that you have to fix and you have to improve. It's literally just this way of thinking and this way of focusing and this way of feeling that you have to heal. That's all. That's really all it is.
Yeah, once you get your mind in the right place, the body will take care of itself.
Absolutely. And we can, foods and way of eating can help with that. I'm a big proponent of herbs and all of that. But I've seen with my work time and time again, I saw in my own life, this was a 12-year journey. And I promise you all, I tried everything in that journey. Like, I did every diet. I did every herbal tincture. I did every, vision quest, I did all of those things. And the things that began to really shift my health the most miraculously so, and the most positively, was when I began to shift how I felt about myself, and my thinking and my feeling. And I've seen, again, time and time again, I've seen people who, they're raw vegan diet, they drink green juices, they take herbal, but they're not fixing that aspect of themselves, and they get a little better, but they don't get a lot better. Yeah. Or they get a lot better, but they can't keep it, which is what happened to me in the first time, right? I did all of those tools and did all of that, but I didn't change internally how I was feeling about myself. And so, yeah, I could, quote unquote, attract to myself what I wanted, but I couldn't keep it. And that's how you keep things in your life. That's how you keep the flow of good coming to you, is that you change how you feel about yourself and what you're holding as the truth.
So these journals must be pretty powerful from day one to 1 year later, to 2 years later, to 3 years later.
Oh yeah. At first you sit down. You sit down at first with this journal and you think, I don't even know if I can get 2 things today, right? It's like, I can't find 2 things that I'm grateful for, that I'm appreciative about myself. And I tell people, just get the 2, right? If you could just get 2, just start with 2, because how the law of attraction actually works, a lot of people think it's just about attracting things and experiences. It's actually about thoughts. So if I can start to think, oh, you know what, I have a really pretty smile, right? And I'm in the attraction of looking for what's right, then the law of attraction will bring me another thought that is in alignment with that. So when I start to just write down 2 things today, tomorrow it's 3 things or 4 things. And then the next thing I'm finding out, oh, you know what? I never thought about that, but I actually have really nice feet. And I've really, you know what? I really have done really well, and here's some accomplishments that I forgot about. And before you know it, if you just do this for like 20 days in a row, you will have you won't be able to stop yourself. You'll be able to like you'll have to literally set a timer to stop and be like, okay, wow. And you look back at the person who started in the beginning and like, wow, I couldn't find anything, and now there's so much that I'm able to revel in about myself. And it's because you just shifted what you're paying attention to, and the universe is bringing you more and more evidence of it, right? It's shining a light. It's like being in a dark room
Hmm.
with a tiny flashlight and you're looking for something, right? And you can only kind of see what that little light shines on, right? Versus walking over to the wall and turning on the light source, and now you see everything. In the beginning, you just have that little flashlight and you're in a little dark room. And the more and more you begin to practice that, you begin to turn the full lights on.
I was at a concert, a seminar one time, and one of the speakers said the mind is the darkroom where all negatives are developed.
Nice.
Now, the
Hmm.
duality of that is what you're doing, because all your influx is negative or self-defeating or cruelty to yourself, right? And you're starting that little thing with, even if it's just one thing, and you write that down and you go back the next day and you write it again, and all of a sudden what you're doing is you're pushing all those negatives away and letting all that light in.
Yeah, you're changing the momentum, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
you just had a momentum. Like if I roll a ball down a hill, it's going pretty fast. And if I try to catch it like three-fourths of the way down the hill, it's going to be harder, right?
mm-hmm,
to do than if I catch it in the beginning when it's just starting to roll. So all this happening is we just have this negative ball that's been rolling,
mm-hmm,
I don't necessarily like to talk in terms of negative and positive. I really like to do more like expansive and limiting.
mm-hmm.
So you just have some limiting thoughts that have been rolling for a while, and you have to just get the expansive thoughts rolling. Like get that ball rolling and go with that flow. Get that groove going so that it starts to groove in your consciousness to where you don't have to try so hard anymore to stop, the limiting, because you have this groove of positive going. And that's just I love what you said. It's like you're what are you developing in your consciousness, and what are you hanging on your wall? Right,
Right.
any little thing you're developing, and then you hang it on the wall. What are you developing and what are you hanging? And it's just a shift in that.
Mm-hmm. It is amazing, and I mean, to me, you when you're ready, you're standing at a crossroads, and you don't know whether to take the restrictive side or the unlimited side,
Mhm.
and that's when they're ready for the teacher to appear.
Yeah.
And when that happens, if it's the right one, man, it is liberating, and it can take some time and patience, but it's still liberating.
Yeah, I love that you said time and patience, because I think in today's culture with social media and so many people out putting their messages out and all that, there's a lot of messages that we can get a hold of that are like, you can heal or manifest or attract whatever you want tomorrow, right? You can do all of that, and you may be able to, depending on where
Mm-hmm.
you are. But
Yes.
if you're in the muck and mire and you've had years of being in the muck and mire, you have to be really gentle and accept the pace of unfolding that works the best for you. And I'm a witness, I'm a living witness here of someone who tried to push the pace in the beginning, which is why, people ask me all the time, like, why did it take so long for me? And I'm like, because I tried to rush it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
tried to rush it, and it took me a long time to really wake up and just be like, let's just be still and slow down, and it's okay. We're going to get there, and when you get there, it's going to be worth it, no matter what the time is, and that the timing is always perfect. I work with a lot of people who come to me and they may be in their 60s or 70s, and they're saying, and they're beating up on themselves, and they're like, I didn't get it before, and I should have all the should haves. I should have
Oh yeah,
gotten
yeah,
this
yeah.
by now. And I was like, you can beat yourself right into never getting it.
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
going to beat yourself. And I promise you, when you get liberated, whenever you get liberated, it's totally worth it. Even if you were just liberated for 5 minutes,
Hmm.
that liberation is so worth it. And the journey you took, you will understand why it took that, and you'll be grateful for it. You're not going to be, I'm not, I don't regret the years that it took. I don't
Hmm.
regret the path. I know I know now that it wasn't always necessary, that it took that time, but I don't regret it because this is the person I am today. It's worth it. I got here. However
Hmm.
I got here, I got here. And it's worth it.
Do you feel too that the moment you stop chasing it or pushing, trying to get it, and you just realize it's going to take time, it actually goes faster from that moment on because you let go of all that stuff.
I love you. I love that you said that because you're getting into this really juicy key, which is when we are in the moment, the process of pushing and struggling. What we're saying is we don't have it, which is actually, we're talking about soul embodiment here, right? So it's actually rejecting a truth because
Hmm.
what the soul part of us knows is that there is nothing being withheld from us. It's already here. You have it.
Yes.
It's already here. So you don't have to push. You don't have to stress. You don't have to struggle. You don't have to like worry about when. You just have to relax and let it show up because it's already here. But when we're thinking that we don't have it, then we're actually in the way.
Mm.
We're actually in the way of the I just posted something this morning saying you don't ever really attract anything because nothing's being withheld from you. You just raise your awareness and your energy to a level that you can see what's already here, right? And so when I'm in the moment of saying pushing and like it's not here and I need to, where is it, and hurry up, what I'm actually doing is I'm telling myself that it's not here and I don't have and I'm not who I really am. And when I can let go, and what you said so beautifully, and relax, I get to raise myself into the energy of the truth, which is all is well now
Mm.
and all is here now. And it begins to unfold for me in a way that is very graceful and timely and faster than it does when I am in the energy of pushing and struggling and lack. Because that's when I'm in the energy of lack. I'm in the energy of lack when I think something's not here and I have to make it be here. And I can't be in the energy of lack and experience abundance.
True.
I can't. So when I step out of that and I have to experience the energy of abundance to experience abundance. So when I'm saying all is well, it's okay. It's here or it's coming and all in its due time, then I'm there. I'm already there. And
Yes.
then it can show itself.
What taught me that was, and I didn't have this last time, I have this time, Angie. My mug says
Oh yeah.
future millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, if you're a future millionaire, you'll never be a millionaire because it's
Mm-hmm.
always in the future.
Exactly.
So I keep this mug to remind me of that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But you need a new one. You need
I
a new
know,
one that
yes.
says now today. Oh, no.
So
Yeah.
if you can't sit in the being of what you want to be, then it's really hard to get there.
Yeah. We are human beings,
Yes.
which we forget. So
Infinite.
often.
Infinite beings with infinite potential and an infinite universe and a world of abundance. We're taught scarcity and self-doubt and all these things that suppress us and hold us down. And that's what we have to let go of. And once we let go of that, the infinite world opens to us.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that is my very definition. At least that is my approach to what healing is. It's a reconnecting. Healing, the definition of healing to me is reconnecting to the truth that wholeness is here, wellness is here, abundance is here, um, worthiness is here. And so it's not something out there or something I need to get. It's something that's here. And so can I be those things now? Because that's the more I be in my energy and in my emotional state,
Yes.
the more I be whole, the more I feel like all of my needs are met. Even if I don't have physical evidence of wholeness or wellness or my
Hmm.
needs being met, if I can feel it, like I can't control the physical evidence right now, but I can control how I feel and what I'm
Hmm.
thinking about. And if I can feel that and if I can think that and I can hold that for a while, then again, my reality must match it. It must match my inner world. My inner world is the literal foundational essence for my outer world. So the more I can do that, the more I can feel well, the more I can feel supplied for and held and cared for, the more that evidence begins to show itself for me, right? But the more I feel like I need to make it so, that I need to do something to fix it to where it is, the more it will stay out there somewhere. It will stay in the future somewhere. That's how we like collapse the infinite possibilities into like my current reality. Is can I bring it into my now? Can I feel it into my now and think it into my now so that it's not just some esoteric philosophical idea then, that I'm already experiencing it in my energy. And so then it has to experience in my reality.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That is.
So, yeah, where did you start then when your journey of doing this? Like, when you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for a living, where did you even know where to begin?
So, oh, that's a good question. It was, funny. I, I tend in my past, I tend not to take the straight road to things. um, I always do the roller coaster loop de loops, right?
Me too.
So, yeah. So when I first started, I was so I live in Oklahoma, and so I had never heard of a life coach before. So I was
Hmm.
started as a life coach, and I had never heard of it until the teleseminars were started. When I started, this was about 7 years ago or so, and that's when the teleseminars started to get big. Everybody was doing teleseminars, and so I was listening to this teleseminar, and this person, I think it was a woman this time, was talking about her work as a coach and helping people transform their lives and all of this. What she does, I was like, oh my god, like I can do that. Like that's basically, I love doing that. I think I could do that. And I was not at the time, I was not living. I was not doing anything like this. I think at that time I was either working for my father, who has an upholstery shop, and hating every minute of it.
Hmm.
Right. I had moved back home to Oklahoma because I was living in D.C. to try to do my healing process, to be in a supportive community. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And so I started to kind of think, I think I can get this together. So I listened to teleseminars. I listened to a lot of teleseminars to try and to learn how to start your own business. And so I launched this business of life coaching, but I didn't believe that I could really fully be, because this part of me wasn't fully healed yet. So I didn't
Hmm.
believe I could be fully all of myself and like teach about spirituality and metaphysics and intuition and all of that and really make money. So what I was doing was ended up doing was I was working with entrepreneurs, helping them make money.
Hmm.
And I hated it because what I really wanted to talk about was, as I was talking to them about making money, I could see, oh, why you're not actually making the money you want to make is, one, because you're not doing what you really want to do, and two is you have some energetic stuff going on. You don't feel worthy of the money. You don't. You have a consciousness of lack, and you don't have a consciousness of abundance. But they weren't the people I was working with weren't wanting to hear that, right?
Right.
So I was again in this again. My business was a reflection of my internal state, which is it was a business that wasn't really authentically me and wasn't really what I really wanted to do. So it took a few years for that to get really painful for me
Mm-hmm.
until, that kind of got to a height and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it happened to where this kind of divine mystical event again happened to where I was getting my license for my business. And I hadn't heard from them in a while. Like I had submitted all my papers for my business and I hadn't heard. So I called them up and I was like, okay, why isn't why do I not have my license? And by the way, at this time I was doing really well financially. Like I was making really good money. I had just been named one of the top 20 under 40 in Oklahoma. Had been This magazine had done this whole
Wow.
this whole thing on me, and I had like my picture in magazines and all this. And the name of my business was the Prosperous Life Academy. And so I called, and the people were like, "You can't have that name." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? I can't have this name." They're like, "Well, in the state of Oklahoma, you can't have a name of a business that's very similar to somebody else's business, the name of somebody else's business." And there was a Prosperity Bank here.
Oh.
And I was like, "But we don't even do the same things. We're not even in the same field of work." And they were like, "We're sorry. Like, you're gonna have to choose another name." And that I had like this breakdown because I was like, "What?" Like, they just released all this magazine with me in it and the Prosperous Life Academy, and I just won this award. And what's it gonna look like for me not to be like I? How am I gonna come out to the world and say I'm no longer the Prosperous Life Academy? And I was literally having this breakdown for 20 minutes. And then, and at the height of my anxiety, I was like, okay, we need to meditate. We need to go in and ask your soul for the answer because there's always something we can do here. And there's obviously this is a message some type of way. So I went into meditation, and in my meditation, I heard really clearly, very clearly, and very lovingly, my soul said, "You've always just wanted to just be yourself. So now's your opportunity." So I came out of, well, I'm sorry, you always wanted to get paid just to be yourself. So now's your opportunity. So I came out of the meditation and I knew what I needed to do. And so I called the office back that was in charge of my license and I said, "Is Jerome Braggs LLC available?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's the name of my work." And I knew then that I was going to do a business. My business was going to change, and that it was going to be about what I cared about, which was teaching people how to love themselves and how to embody their soul so that they can heal and live really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was going to trust that somehow the universe loved me enough that it was going to show me how to be paid to just be myself. And it's been a beautiful journey ever since that moment. And but that it didn't just I didn't just wake up and say, "Got it. Like here's what I want to do. Here's it." Right? There was this roller coaster of like all these experiences where I was doing what I really did. I thought I was doing what I wanted to do, and it definitely was not. And again, it was that whole thing about being authentic. And can I just really allow myself to be myself and to show up as myself in whatever I'm doing? And if I'm going to be working and I'm going to own something and it's going to be the majority of the time I spend in the world, it might as well be about me being me. Yeah.
Do you feel though that that is an area where people really get stuck because they don't want to do something until they know exactly what they want to do, so they wait?
Not even just yes, and I'm not even just in business though, but it's in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like something I think we talked about earlier is we want to see the whole staircase. We want to see all the steps from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is you really don't want to do that. You think you do, but you don't, because the person that's on, so let's just use the alphabet, for example. So the steps are from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's on step K is so different from the person who's at step A and the things they're having to do, and the strength and the vulnerability and the transparency or the skill set that they're in is so different than that if you saw that person and you saw what they were doing and what they're having to do to live at that step, you scare the shit out of yourself, and
Hmm.
you would not even take step B. If the person on my deathbed that was on my deathbed that said, "Okay, I'm going to do this healing journey." If that version of me could see what what I had to do to, like, tell people about the fact that I'm on this interview right now, and I started this interview with saying that I was gay, to that person was death. That was
Yeah.
horror. And I would not have wanted a piece of that because I would have was so afraid,
Hmm.
right? And so you think you want to see the whole step, but what ended up happening, if you saw them and all the things that those steps require, not just what they would require, but the person you would be along the way, is so unrecognizable to the person that's at step one, you would scare the shit out of yourself. So you wouldn't
Absolutely.
do it. So you really only ever need to see the next step, because you can take that step, and that step is only a slight stretch. It's not a big quantum leap of a stretch. This Jerome sitting here today is totally unrecognizable to that Jerome in 2005. Totally I would not even know who this is. Would not even believe that was possible, and would be scared of this type of life where I am transparent and vulnerable and I don't hide anything and I am living my whole truth. Like, I would be horrified of that. So you don't want to see that. So you think you need all of those steps to start, but you would, in actuality, that would be the most detrimental thing to your unfolding.
Hmm.
So just do with what's the next thing that's calling you to do. So you don't need to know the whole idea, like how it all
No.
looks together or exactly how it fits together. You may just know, you know, I really just want to, like, I started with a radio show. And at the time, beforehand, not, that's not true. Up, like, probably like the fourth step in my business was getting a radio show. Well, a year before that, people had been asking me to do the radio, and I was like, that was not what I hated. That I hated
Hmm.
that idea. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to be on the radio. That's not me. I want to act. I could be on TV, but the radio, what? No, never. And that was part of the unfolding to
Hmm.
what got me here, and it helped me learn, and it helped me grow in such a way. So you just need to go with what's the next thing, and that next thing for me was, oh, I wanted the first step was, oh, I think I want to do a business on helping people. that was
Hmm.
that was all I had.
Yeah.
And I just said, okay, that's the first decision, and then the next decision was, okay, the next thing that came was listen to some of these teleseminars. A lot of people are offering free, they're talking for free about how do you start a business. That was my next thing.
Hmm.
And that led to a radio show. And that led to, so just take the next step. Because if you wait for the whole staircase, number one, your soul will never send it to you, because your soul knows this. It knows you'll scare yourself out of it. So the soul will never send you the whole staircase. It never comes. You will never see all the steps.
Right.
And you may think you know all of them, but as you begin that journey, you're going to find all of a sudden you're on step C, and everything you thought about, which was step D, E, F, G, is like you completely have to go back to the drawing board and do something different. So you never get all the steps. You just get the next thing,
Right.
and just do that.
And those steps are there to develop the wisdom, so that when you know when you're at the top.
Exactly. And then there are
So,
quantum leaps too.
oh,
Like,
absolutely, yes.
you may get to step, F, and instead of going to G, the next thing is L.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, you
So,
just you never get the whole step, and I think that's something in our culture and in our society we keep talking about. That's just a falsehood that we need to release.
absolutely. We're almost out of time. Can you? Is there one last thing you would like to, a message you'd like to send to people to help them?
If there's anything I would love people to know from me, one last thing I would just leave out there, not just on this call, but in my life, is the loving yourself really is the key. It's the key that unlocks everything. The wealth, the health, the relationships, the joy, your purpose. It all is lies behind your willing to make your relationship with yourself a priority and to make it as delicious and accepting and embracing as you can.
Fantastic. That was a great message. It's been amazing having you on the show. I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah.
You have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience to share with the world, and we appreciate you coming here and sharing that with us and our audience.
Thank you. So this was a blessing. I loved this conversation. I loved sharing space with you two, and I love the work and the intention that you are about. Thank you. It was an honor and a blessing. And anytime you want to play again like this, I'd be honored.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, everybody out there, know that you are loved.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
And we can put a link. Did you say that already, Gary? Or put
No.
your link in? Okay.
Right. We'll put your link in, and if you want to say it on the air, please do.
Yeah, my website is jeromebraggs.com, and my Facebook, which is where I do all the articles and videos and live videos and post every day. It's always me every time. It's facebook.com/Coach Jerome Braggs, COACH Jerome Braggs.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the description below so that they can click on it.
Thank you.
All right.
One last thing. Okay, we got our You're Enough shirts, Gary, but we also need an Unstoppable. So
Awesome.
People need to reach out, and know that don't ever stop. Don't ever stop
right.
growing. Don't ever stop doing what you're doing and progressing. So thank you so much, Jerome. This was awesome and quite the blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to more.
All right.
Absolutely. Bye.
Have a great day, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You all too.